So I'm on my way to Bowris with the medical team from the Andean Medical Mission. It's 2 in the morning. We're trying to cross a river. We have to call for a ferry to come and get us. We've got to drive our ambulance onto this ferry and it's going to take us across. But it's 2 in the morning. The 2 gentlemen who are going to ferry us across, they have been drinking. They're up to their eyeballs in chewing coca, and they've completely lost control of their craft, if you like. So we've driven our ambulance onto this ferry. They are trying to move it across with a tiny little underpowered engine, and we are sailing downstream. We're nowhere near the crossing that we're meant to be. You're shining a torch onto the river and you can see the reflection of crocodiles' eyes looking back at us. And Sam, our theatre nurse, turned to me at that moment in time, and I was a little bit worried, and she said, "Dave, this is the best moment of my life." And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about working in extreme environments to try and eliminate blindness, and 5 things that you might want to consider which will help you to get the most out of your experience. So the first point that I want to talk about today is just literally that about a little bit of thought around the geography of where you're actually going, making sure that you are comfortable in the trip that you're doing. 2 weeks can be a very long time if you have a really bad stomach ache the whole time, if you're bitten to bits by insects, if you cannot sleep because of the temperature or the lack of any sort of cooling at night, or you may be at altitude working with a community that live in the mountains and you may be suffering with altitude sickness. Just consider where you're going to be and make sure that you choose a group where you're going to be comfortable. If you're somebody who gets a lot of tummy upsets, then maybe don't go too remote, because there'll be very little refrigeration and very probably limited access to fruits and vegetables. And so think about the geography and just make sure that perhaps you don't go too remote too soon until you know that you're able to be comfortable in the place that you're working. So that's important. The second point that I want to talk about is fitting into a strategy that actually eliminates blindness. You're going to be an awful lot more, you're going to be a lot more comfortable working with a project that you know is making a difference. So think strategically. Don't just join a group because it's happening. Think about, is it actually going to make a difference where you actually are? Because you can prevent blindness with community projects, and there's lots of them that you could either set up yourself or that you could join. So I'm talking about things like trying to eliminate a blinding disease. This has been the case with river blindness, for example, in Africa, and they've had some great success in specifically targeting just one disease. You could take, for example, vitamin A deficiency in communities where there's poor access to vegetables, where there's poor access to meat. Vitamin A can still be a blinding disease. And think strategically. If you're going to target vitamin A, well then maybe you should target immunization of measles as well, because the two are linked. Blindness from measles is nearly always related to a poor diet and breakdown of the cornea, and it's often associated with people who don't have a lot of vitamin A in their diet. So take a strategic approach to community work, and you'll have a lot more satisfaction in knowing that yes, you've tied in with the local initiatives, you've tied in with the Bolivian Ministry of Health if it's in Bolivia or wherever you are, and that you need to leave notes so that other people can come along and follow and not repeat what you've already done. And this is true of surgery as well. Cataract surgery particularly is a big part of reducing avoidable blindness, because it's a reversible blindness. If 50% of blindness is cataract and 80% of that is reversible, then obviously NGOs are going to focus on cataract surgery, but make sure that you do it in conjunction with the local services that are there, that you don't ruin a growing, developing ophthalmology practice by just going in and doing everything for free and giving out loads of glasses and just taking away that ophthalmologist's potential to develop a service there that is there constantly, you know, every day, forever. If you come along and do everything for free and that ophthalmologist can't continue to trade and you don't come back, then what you've done is you've made things worse. And I would add to that, part of eliminating blindness is adding specialty. So if you go to a city and you work with ophthalmologists there to add to the number or the specialties that they can actually tackle successfully, then that can be wonderful, but it can also be detrimental. So consider, if you're going to go and teach phaco to a local surgeon most of his or her patients are bilaterally blind with cataract, phaco is not your answer, and you may well find that that surgeon is never going to be able to afford to buy a phaco. So going along teaching phaco probably isn't the right decision, and you may not find it particularly rewarding knowing that that surgeon's never going to do it. Or worse, that you convince the surgeon that phaco is the way to go, they buy a phaco, they leave the little village that they're living in and they go to a big city and they set up there, and all you've done is moved a developing service to an area where perhaps they're not needed as much as where they were before you came. The next point that I want to talk about is new charities versus old charities and finding a balance that's right. If I look back over the 10 years that the Andean Medical Mission have been working in Bolivia, we started off with not the greatest level of experience, with relatively poor equipment, and we muddled through. For our first couple of years we didn't really do any teaching, we didn't have a great strategy, we were just trying to clear the massive quantity of bilaterally blind patients that we found here. So the number of blind in Bolivia is huge, and it is growing every year. So my point here is that don't be afraid to join a new charity, but don't expect necessarily too much from them in the early stages. It takes a while to get equipment that is of high standard. I look at our microscope now, we have, you know, the best Zeiss optics, we have a beautiful teaching arm, it is absolutely terrific, and the quality of operations that we can do is very high, but it cost us a lot of money and it took a long time to raise that money. And to begin with, we had a little Apasami portable microscope that bolted onto the side of the bed, and it wasn't great. We got good results with it, but they're not as good as what we get now. And there were certain frustrations with equipment that didn't work, or lack of equipment. We didn't have a B scan for 3 or 4 years. I also think that there is a value in starting new services. If you go somewhere and you think, well, where can I help, where can I fit in, and there literally is nothing there for you to join, then don't be afraid to start a service of your own, or a service for the people of a region that is new. But it's going to take you a while to get to a standard. But you should aspire to get to that standard. You should chase excellence, and every opportunity that you can, improve the equipment, improve your surgical protocols, improve the way that you communicate with your teams, and get better at doing what you're there to do. And so the tip here really is to join a charity. If you are somebody who wants everything to be perfect, then join a really established, well-run, well-organized organization where everything is flawless, because they've had time to get to that stage. But it's also quite rewarding and quite exciting to join a new charity and to help them to develop and to grow. The final point that I want to talk about, as we're running out of light this evening, is results. and it is so much more rewarding to work for a results-focused organization than it is, I would imagine, to work for something or an organization that's just looking at numbers. So if you're thinking, well, I would like to join perhaps the Andean Medical Mission, I would like to know how good their surgery is. If you ask me for an audit, I can provide you with one, because we focus on surgical outcomes and the results of what we're doing. We know what our visions are before the surgery. We know what our complications are. We know who has the most complications and who has the least complications of our surgeons. And we know what their final visual acuity is. We know that at day 3, when we generally have to go, but we also follow up. So 1 month later I will return, or someone from the Andean Medical Mission will return, and we call all our patients back in and we do their visual acuities again, and we look at, did we make a positive difference? And joining an organization with that mentality, with that point of view, I think makes all of the difference. It gives you the satisfaction of knowing that what you're doing is helping. It's very easy to go into this mindset of we have to operate on everybody, we have to do everything, and you leave a whole load of people worse off. And it's really important that if you are joining an organization, ask them, not just how many operations they do every year, but ask them what are their results. And if they can't show you results, then I would question if you're going to get the right amount, or if that organization is the one for you. But if they can say, yes, here we are, here's the surgical results from last year, and they look great, then that gives you a very good understanding of how the organization is thinking, what equipment they obviously have, the level of experience that they have in organization, but also in terms of surgical expertise, and the fact that they are focused on making a difference, on eliminating avoidable blindness. So that's it for today. Just a few tips which I hope will make a difference for you if you're considering working abroad in blindness, in eliminating avoidable blindness. It's incredibly rewarding. It's even more rewarding if you join the right organization. So thank you. We'll see you on the next one.